Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Today, it's time to talk trust with Lea-brovedani. Every third Thursday, Nancy and I welcome Lea-brovedani on the show to talk about trust. And Lee is the trust architect. She is a speaker and workshop facilitator on trust and recognized as a top thought leader on trust by the organization Trust Across America. She's also an author. Her latest two books are Trust Me, Restore Belief and Confidence in an Uncertain World, and Trusted, Secret Lessons from an Inspired Leader. And I encourage you to go to her website. It's Lea-brovedani.com, and I'm going to spell that out because it is an interesting and cool name. Lee is L-E-A, and then, because you would want to say Leah, but it's Lee, and then it's Brovedani, and that's B-R-O-V-E-D-A-N-I. So Lea-brovedani.com. She's got an awesome blog. I love following her on Facebook and Twitter. She's always posting great stories and reminding us about how important trust is, especially with those we work with, our teammates, and also in leadership. And that's what she's going to talk about today, is strategic vulnerability when it comes to trust in the workplace. So welcome back, Lee. How are you?
I'm good. And how was your New Year's?
Good. We're doing good. It started off good. I think we both, Nancy and I start off some giggles and grins with friends virtually, and you got to have some giggles and grins with friends in person, right? So that's
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We had one other couple, and they've stayed very cautious and healthy and everything. So we had one couple laughed so hard that we had to use the washroom. It was, that shuffle walk to the washroom, because I don't think I've laughed that hard. I think I've been storing it up for a couple of years.
Oh yeah, see,
Laughter
is good. Laughter is good. So in a workplace situation, how important is laughter and kind of letting loose and not always being uptight and getting things done in regards to just leaning on each other and having a good giggle, because that is part of trust.
If you walk into an office and, there's the bricks and mortar, doesn't usually happen as much anymore. But in the past, I could walk into an office and know how much trust there was in the office just by listening. And laughter is an indication that people trust each other and are comfortable with each other. People aren't laughing and sharing things if they're if they're uptight with each other and they don't trust each other. Those offices are usually, you can almost feel the oppression. So laughter is an indication that people are being open, honest, and vulnerable with each other.
I like that. When Nancy had her magazine in South Africa, if you went into the art room, it was bonkers.
That's crazy.
She had two artists, graphic designers. They had their own language, which was bing bong, zing zang, like whatever they were talking to the computer. And then sometimes some really good, juicy, interesting words that we shouldn't repeat, but they were funny. But these two worked together so well and taught each other things, which I thought was great. They both taught me a ton. And I think, excuse me, if you don't have that culture to be able to do that freedom, like Nancy let them play music and do what they needed to have this creative space. And so they did an awesome, fantastic job, but it was, the zing, zang, boom, bang. It was like Mad Magazine, really.
There were times where they threw food at each other. They did. Fun. It just
creatively.
Yes, it just in fun, sort of. And they were, fortunately, in that office, they were upstairs and everybody else was downstairs.
So they had
but you could see them. And they would shout over downstairs. They would shout at us sometimes, and sometimes paper airplanes came sailing down. It was fun.
Oh, that would just probably lighten the whole atmosphere for the office. It would be a place where if you were having a bad day, I'd want to be upstairs, just kind of sitting there and absorbing that atmosphere, just to lighten things up.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Well, you needed that because it's a deadline oriented industry, and so you have pressure. And if you don't relieve the pressure, the poor washroom.
Okay.
But so that's, I mean, vulnerability is about kind of
Right.
opening it up a little bit. Like a musician can tell their story. It could be a personal breakup, like a painful one. It's in a song. And it's up to us how we want to take it. But there's vulnerability in music, in comedy, in the arts. I think
Right.
vulnerability somehow also, because of that, goes with integrity. And you know what I mean? Because it's about being honest, but not, you talk about it in your blog post about the different levels of vulnerability that you can have, that honesty and that sharing and being vulnerable, but it's about knowing who and what level, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's so many business books and they talk about the different levels, and in psychology you hear about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so for anyone who is interested in that, you can see all of those. Well, it's the same thing when you're developing trust with someone. You don't share everything about yourself until you've kind of tested the person out. And if you do, I don't know if that's the best idea until you've actually established whether or not this is a person you can trust. So the first level is just sharing just a few stories, like getting to know the person. It's like, the first time you get involved in a relationship, you're kind of checking out to see who they are, what kind of personal stories, and then you get a sense of the type of person they are.
Yeah, Lisa and I worked for a company when we first came back to this country where they sent us on a course with all different employees from different stores. And one of the courses was we had to climb up that tree. You had
It's a
harness
trust
on,
fall.
a trust fall.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
so then they tell you to fall off the tree. And my boss at the last second said he was going to throw a dollar bill out to see how many people would leave the net and go after the dollar bill instead of catch the person falling. And it's funny on one side, but
Yeah,
it is funny.
It is, but it's
because they're a bunch of salespeople.
Yeah.
So-
and so it was funny, but there was that split second where you're like, I don't think I want to fall now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there was a little dent in that trust.
Of people catching you, because
Yeah.
everybody had to catch you. And then when you did it, and I'm not good with heights and going up and doing that,
That was scary.
and then people were holding you and basically holding your body, that you don't like these people, some of them.
Yeah.
You don't. And now they're touching your body.
Yeah.
And then they started rocking me, and I about like wanted to
you didn't like that.
absolutely freaked out. Like, all these people are touching my body, and this is a no-no to me. Don't, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
if you don't know a bunch of guys and they're holding your body like that, it didn't feel good. It wasn't done. I don't think it was facilitated very well, actually.
No, I don't think so at all.
So it was a
Yeah,
very
and-
weird exercise.
When I talk about strategic vulnerability, I talk about the different stages you go through.
Mhm.
And they asked you to go from 0 to 5
In 1 hour.
having an opportunity to, like if maybe they would have had opportunities for people to get together and then share a little bit about each other and talk about when they were vulnerable and it didn't work and what they learned from
Well,
it.
I think we just did.
But I don't think that they would do that exercise today. Not with men catching women as they fall. And certainly I think my boss learned a lesson, because his boss was not happy about throw out the dollar bill thing and see what happens.
And then there was a gentleman who's quite obese, and
I remember that.
and they had a nickname for him.
Yeah,
And it was,
mean.
I mean, this was
mean.
this was a bad work culture. I mean, that's why we're
Yeah.
not there. And so they made him get up there, and he was, I mean, this guy had to fend, and he wasn't necessarily the nicest person, but you can understand why, if everyone's, he knows that he's being teased behind his back, right? And so now he's getting up there, and he did have a heart problem, and he was shaky. And then, so now, here are all the people that laugh and, oh, let's get the dollar bill. And now everyone has to catch him. That was traumatic.
Yeah.
That was,
Everybody.
so yeah, we
Yeah.
did go from 0 to 5, didn't we?
Yeah.
Here's what not to do. I don't think you do this in your workshops.
No, that's not something I do. You know, like there's different ways of doing exercises to show vulnerability that kind of ease you into that without risking life and limb. I mean, I've done ones where people, I have I've had, I think, one group that I had 200 people, and I did a trust exercise where half of the room had blindfolds, and then whoever was opposite them, we actually just walked outside, and they had to guard the person, and then they switched. So they knew that they had to trust the person to make sure that they didn't step off something or didn't hurt themselves. And they also knew that the person would be leading them. So there was that whole thing about you have to give and get trust. And if the person wasn't taking care, we did have kind of people monitoring the whole thing to make sure no one was hurt.
Right.
Sure.
But the worst that could happen is that they would maybe fall off of the sidewalk and bruise skin their knee or something. And that didn't even happen.
Right. I mean, I done, because you can find it. I've done exercises like that, and that is, I think the whole thing is and it's fun because you all giggle while you're doing this. You know what I mean? Those kind of that, and it's not, but what we're talking about, I think, was a little over the top. And it was kind of mean. And when I asked them to put me down, they kept rocking, and then that's when I got mad.
I think
like you know, so that, but this was, I mean, a culture over 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So
and
you've got to
also I
think that's an
believe
older culture.
I think so
the
too.
person who was in charge of the course that did not work for our company, that was his own business. I believe he was, wasn't he part of the military at some point? I think he was
he lost it during his facilitation. He did have a sharing thing, and it was only at the end of all this traumatic stuff. And he gets up and starts telling about how he killed a kid reversing in a car and starts crying in front of all of us.
Something. So
and people start doing their own, everybody started crying. My boss started crying and about, you know, I don't know what, I didn't get the new race car. I don't know what, if that was his kind of personality. But I mean, it was really, Nancy and I were just sitting there going,
like, what the heck?
What are we doing here?
What
are we doing? Get the hell
Wow.
out. And it was one of the things that actually did kind of, that was one of the sign of the, you know, when you just kind of like red flag about this. So that was kind of one of those nudges of this is not the place you belong.
Yeah, this is not where I want to work.
You know, first of all, if you are a facilitator, you're not doing it for your own therapy.
Right.
It's not about you. So the first thing that, you know, if I was working with a company, is find out what are the issues within the organization. What is it they're trying to improve? And then as a facilitator, you actually do a needs assessment. I mean, there's a lot to it. Where are they right now? Where do they want to be? And what are you going to do in the middle? And how are you going to know that you actually got them there? The way you get them there, if the whole thing was around doing therapy, crying and talking about what he talked about might have been appropriate, but for what he was trying to accomplish, it sounds like it was terribly inappropriate.
It was really, really weird. I think it's one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had.
It was a very weird thing because it was tied to alcohol abuse. And I mean, that whole thing, and we're all sitting there and you're talking to a room of musicians turned salespeople. This was not, this was crazy. But anyway, no, but talk about vulnerability, right?
Yes.
So there's also misplaced vulnerability. Where does that come in? I know there's a different levels. You say get to know people, then you can start sharing. And the levels are all up on your blog post on Lea-brovedani.com, everyone. But what about misplaced vulnerability? Because some people start telling you things you don't want to hear in a workplace. You know what I mean? There's people who just come and decide, I'm going to confide in you. And I'm like, I don't want you to.
I don't want to know.
I don't want to know. You know what I mean? Can that also,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's almost sometimes setting you up for something. I always get a little like, just a little curious when you get, it's kind of the reverse of the office gossiper.
Yeah.
And they
someone
really
who's
are the
sharing
same
too much.
personality. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when it gets into like, appropriateness too, because when you've got a person who's doing that, they're looking for a therapist. And if you're a really empathetic person, they might be coming to you because you may come across as someone who is very understanding. And, for anyone who is familiar with the work of Brene Brown, who was, if you haven't, go on the TED Talks and just put in her name. She talks about boundaries and with vulnerability, and especially when you're working with trust, vulnerability has to be appropriately tied to boundaries, and you have to know what your own boundaries are. So if someone comes to me and they start asking or sharing more than I'm comfortable, that's when I will put up my boundaries in a really compassionate way. So for example, if someone is coming up to me and saying, like I don't know them very well, and they're saying, I've got problems with my child and my husband isn't sleeping with me and I don't know what, am I not attractive? And you're going like,
whoa.
I've had those moments where someone's doing that and it's like, whoa. If my friend was telling me that I've known for 25 years, we've established that level of intimacy, but someone I don't know, I'm not comfortable. And in that moment, I'll say, wow, it sounds like there's some real difficulties that you're going through at this point. I think that this is something that you should talk about with a therapist. Do you know someone good?
Yeah.
And here's where you can find someone. I'm not comfortable hearing this. And I would let them know. So a lot of times people are afraid to say to someone when they're going through that because they think, wow, this person sounds like they're off their nut. And what happens if I say something, the wrong thing to them? And maybe I'm just supposed to sit here and listen uncomfortably.
No, because it sets up for them starting to come to you more, and they're attaching some level of responsibility that you didn't sign up for.
Yeah.
And we're not all therapists who understand to say the right thing either.
Exactly.
When someone's overwhelmed, they may need a professional, pair of ears versus mine. That's the interesting thing about workplace culture. And I wonder about now, when teams are working from home remotely, I wonder about vulnerability and the communication using social media and quick emails and little chat boxes, how things can get said the wrong way. Like, you know what I mean? And it can go through the office quicker sometimes than being in the office at the coffee pot.
Yeah. And if you post something, even though you think you've deleted it, like I posted something on a friend's Facebook page the other day, and then I went, oh, I don't think this is correct. And it wasn't a horrible thing, but I went and deleted it. Well, she still saw it, and so it's still out there, even though you think you've deleted it. So you have to understand that if you post something, it can be out there forever.
Yeah.
All my typing, my text, whenever I'm using my phone, everybody knows Lisa has fat fingers. Sorry, I apologize now.
Autocorrect.
And autocorrect is not making it help. It does not help. It does not help.
It will type a whole email for you and say something you have no, that's not what I'm talking about.
But the thing too is you can send the wrong thing to the wrong person. And that's the scary part. I think sometimes like now it's like, okay, if you don't, you've got to be careful because you can send the wrong text to the wrong person. Like I know I do a lot of communication of text with people, and I've got like a list of the same names, and one joke went to the completely opposite person. And I like my British humor and my off-color humor. And it went to someone who is absolutely not funny.
Or
You know,
very offended
oopsie.
by, yeah.
Oopsie. And so all you can say is, yes, I have that kind of humor. I'm sorry, that's who I am. So now my vulnerability is there, and now everybody knows. Yes, I like fart jokes.
Whoopee.
Oh, good one, Nancy. Sit on that cushion. So, whatever. It's not a big deal. But you know what I mean? I think that's not a big deal. But it is about forming relationships, because I think like in a leadership position, I want to touch on that, because you may have a deadline for reports or something, and you talk about in your blog of maybe you need, hey, I really screwed up on this, or maybe I sent the wrong text or email to a client, and you've done something wrong. And if you go to the wrong person for help, they're going to nail you and use it to climb ahead in a workforce position. And I don't care if you're working in the office or from home. So you may need help. And if you have a friend that you feel comfortable with in the office, maybe they can help you get past it.
And here's one of the things about leadership. The higher up you go, the more you can demonstrate having that trusting relationship by sharing those kinds of reports and vulnerabilities. So the example, and I can't think of John's last name right now, but he used to be the CEO for, I think, was it Mandalay Bay, or one of the huge, like the whole convention center. And he talked about having conversations with his employees where he shared mistakes that he made. So he would say, listen, I've made this mistake. It cost the company $1 million and we had to fix it. Because he wants to demonstrate that if someone makes a mistake, they should come to him right away. And especially in business, because if you make a mistake, hide it.
Yeah.
Then that mistake can cost
a lot
more. So if you find out about it right away, it can be fixed right away. And then the damage done down the road isn't as great. But if people are afraid to disclose, then they're going to start hiding mistakes, and that's going to cost the company a lot of money. So being vulnerable at the top and being strategic about it helps save the company money. There's a direct line to it. So there's a reason for having this vulnerability. But if you create this environment where people are afraid to share that they've made a mistake, your company's going to have difficulties. It's going to cost them.
And I think right now, everyone, and I know we touched on this on our happy hour show.
Yeah.
Companies and employees everyone's going through massive change with what's going on with COVID, with shipment problems. I mean, you can't buy a car. So we better take good care of ours. That's taking us across the country. I keep going out there every morning. I say, you keep going, girl. I'm going to take good care of you. You want new shoes? We'll get you new shoes, But right now, like, service cannot be what it used to be. It's impossible. And for those in the service industry to not be honest, like, hey, I can't do this right away. This you're going to have to wait a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah.
The inflation is happening at the same time. So you can't get mad at a company for either keeping the same rates or raising their rates a little bit, because everyone has to survive. But I think we now have to have a better dialogue between customers and the businesses that they're doing business with. I think there's got to be a better, honest, vulnerable dialogue. Hey, sorry, the shipment of sausage didn't come into the restaurant, so I had to do that.
So there's
Sausage
no
didn't come
sausage
into the
day?
restaurant, so sorry. Normally every Wednesday is sausage day with pancakes, but today it's bacon. Sorry, tradition had to be changed. That is the way it is. And you let people all know on social media for your restaurant, no sausage today, but we're doing this instead. People go, oh, a little change. And you were honest in saying this is what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Not trying to quickly make your own version of sausage that you maybe don't know how to do.
Oh,
Or maybe you do.
no, that'd be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and she has a 4-year-old washing machine that it's still in great condition, but there's one part that they can't get in.
Oh, wow.
And so they put it in the dump because there was nothing, and had to get a brand new washer.
Wow.
Well, I don't know what they did with it. They came and took it away. I'd love to believe that there's a warehouse where they put it until they've got the part and they can fix it and sell it. But you know that that's not the reality.
Right.
Now, with all of the things that are happening, there's just this domino effect for all of it. So being able to be honest and be vulnerable and give that information. Maybe it means that we start saying to people, hold on to it, because a year from now, you'll be able to sell it and make some money. Do you have a place to hold on to it? Here's what's going to happen. Like there's so many things to take into consideration right now. And so being vulnerable is really important, but you have to be smart about it. So when I say strategic vulnerability, that's really what it's about. It's about saying, like letting people know the truth with integrity, like you said, Lisa, but knowing that for everything that you do, there's usually an outcome.
Exactly. Well, when we went through, we've done a lot of damage control PR with the radio shows and everything for areas that have gone through hurricanes, wildfires. Nancy and I've personally gone through these disasters and know what it's like, to live in the town. And we understand the tourism industry very well. It's that's who we are. And I don't want to say where it was, but it was in a mountain area. And we did an immediate radio show to let people know that this town is still open. And part of the area, yes, had a devastating wildfire. And at the same time, the government had a shutdown. So we were dealing with a huge mess in tourism for this area that had just been pummeled the year before with wildfires. So everybody was upset. And we did this radio show, and bless her, the one lady, she's now passed away. She did go to high school with Elvis, though. She was a hoot, this lady. She was a hoot. But she was so upset. And instead of saying, we're still open, this has been devastating, please do come to our community. We need your support. We need you to come to our town. And, we need the tourism dollars. You don't even have to put it that way. Just please come and support us. We are open and ready for you. She was like, it's terrible, and screw the government for this, the shutdown, screw this. We're devastated. We're devastated. It's all black, and you actually couldn't see. We were there. You could not see what you call the moonscape on the show. And now the other side of the other part, they're like freaking out. My cell phone is buzzing like you wouldn't believe. People are like, shut her up, shut her up. Like, because then she starts carrying on about minimum wage. So that's too much. That's too much truth. Yeah, I mean, it's true, everything she's saying, but you didn't have to go your emotion. That's what you're saying about emotional side of this.
That's only one side of the story there. That's only one perspective, because there's parts of the forest that were just fine.
Instead of saying, yes, there are parts that are black, and there's different hikes you can do to avoid it, period.
One of the things, if you've, for anyone who has read any of my book, I talk about truth is not part of my trust model. And it doesn't mean that I think it's okay to lie, because you absolutely shouldn't. That's integrity. But the reason I don't put truth as part of my trust model is that it's so subjective. So my truth, and a lot of times I talk about fact, opinion, or beliefs. So a fact could be, yes, part of this is damaged. Part of this is safe. That's a fact. You can go see it. An opinion could be, well, even though parts of it are damaged, the whole thing is ruined, because how can it be okay if even part of it is damaged? That's an opinion. It's not a fact.
Right.
And a belief would be, we're never going to have any business ever again. It's kind of, so when someone is
doomsday, man.
I'm just telling you the truth. It's like, I make a joke about it. I if I say to Rick, my husband, does this dress make me look fat? The wrong answer is no, the dress doesn't.
No, but okay. Whoa. I don't think anybody should
Oh my
ever
gosh.
ask that
But
question.
a boom. So yeah.
That was well done. That was beautifully done.
Oh my gosh.
Gosh.
That's a good one. Wow. That's a
Yeah.
smack. That's a smack.
So the truth that we perceive, and I've had people who have said, well, I don't know why they got upset. I was just telling them the truth. And when I've talked to them, find out they gave an opinion that was really, really nasty.
Mm.
And they gave their opinion without any empathy
Right.
and called it the truth, and then thought the person should say, well, thank you for giving me that opinion."
Feedback.
Yeah.
Right. So this, feedback that starts with an F.
I don't like feedback.
But
It's a really weird word, feedback. It's like you ate and it's coming back. I don't want it
Stop
back.
it. Stop it.
We should just call it vomit. What it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yes. Please give me some vomit.
Yes.
We love your vomit.
Oh boy.
Thanks for shopping with us. Please give us your vomit.
Okay.
But okay, so empathy comes in to, and compassion comes in to vulnerability,
Mm.
so that you can breed trust.
Yes.
So that's important. But you don't have to overdo it. So your article going about, the level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's like, it's baby steps,
Yes.
right? To make it work. And then sometimes you're going to have to work with the person that you don't like, that is going to try and steal what you've done. You're going to steal the report stealer, the report thief, right? There's always someone in there
Yeah.
that's doing the moving.
Sabotages.
Yeah, they're moving up, they're ladder climbers kind of without the integrity.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to work with them, but it doesn't mean you can be personable, but maybe not get into politics. Let's put it that way.
Well,
Maybe not the best way, right?
We're pack animals. We're not meant to be alone. Some
Yeah,
people are definite loners, and that's few and far between. Really, we're pack animals. But if you watch a pride of lions, if one lion gets out of control, the other bigger one just goes bap and takes care of it. And there's a definite hierarchy and structure. But that's because they're animals. Now we're animals, but we're supposedly above them, and we have this brain that works in a different way than theirs does. So we're supposed to be able to get along. And if that was 100% true 100% of the time, there wouldn't be any wars, we wouldn't need borders, and we would be fine. And we would be helping each other without self-interest coming before the pack, the interest of all. And that's a really difficult thing. So I know when you're in a closed work environment, tensions flare, and tensions can arise where if you were out in the open, maybe not so much, because you're like, especially you're like, oh, you have to work 9 hours a day or 8 hours a day in the same environment, cooped up with people you may or may not identify with.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a breeding ground for disagreements and all sorts of things. And so you do become, if it's a good work environment, you're going to have a few friends and you're going to be able to talk openly with them. If it's a bad work environment, everybody is kind of looking at each other sideways and nobody's really speaking the truth. They're like the coffee you brew, I'll go on coffee break and like, no thanks. I think I'll run around the block or something.
Yeah.
Because and I've worked for different companies, and so has Lisa. And some of them, like I used to work for the Automobile Club, and I went from office to office to office. And some offices were great, but there were a couple I was like, whoa, this is nuts. I'm out.
And I bet that what made the difference was it's usually the leadership.
Yep.
And so you can check, and you can almost feel when you walk in there, if you have someone who allows people to learn from, if a
Mhm.
mistake is made, they use it as a learning opportunity. And that doesn't mean that if you hire someone and they're constantly making mistakes, you keep them and keep saying they're learning. No, if they
Yeah.
don't learn it after a couple of times, then
Yeah.
you release them to find another position that they're better suited for.
Mhm.
Right.
Used to work
Well
in
put.
HR.
Nicely said.
Well put, Lee.
Mhm.
Well, the other thing too is it's how things are being led, of like how people are being told what this is what we need to be done. Sometimes it's not making sense, it's the communication of that. But I think the vulnerability part, what we're talking about, is so important, because
Yeah.
all these reports, I mean, the biggest conversation about business other than blockchain, I don't care, and NFTs, take your NFTs and blockchains. I just can't wrap my head around it. But and the shipping issues and all of that, right? The biggest thing is the workforce, the great resignation. And I mean, it's changing
Mhm.
in the economy is
Mhm.
changing, but people are kind of holding onto their guns and not going back to their positions. And it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily, they're finding, you have to do with money. It's about having quality of life,
Yes.
and it's about how they were treated in their workplace. And the
Mhm.
Yes.
tourism industry for sure goes through this. I mean, it's like, they're getting it from the clients. If you're working in a hotel, you're getting it from the customers coming in all crabby from the road, or a bad
Mhm.
plane flight, which definitely is, my God, why don't you go work for the airlines and see how you feel right now?
Yeah.
Really.
Mhm.
And then the leadership, everyone's crabby. And that doesn't breed quality of life. You
Yeah.
can get through major hurdles if you have just a good team, that excitement to, let's fix this, let's make it work.
Yeah.
You know?
And if you have a workplace where there isn't a lot of trust, and you are saying, okay, well, let's start with this vulnerability, you don't go to a 5. You start
Mhm.
at the 1, and you get people. And as a leader, you set what the goal is. So if I'm working with an organization, and you can walk in there and there's some really easy assessments that I can do to see where the level of trust and vulnerability is within the organization, then you can't just go from 0 to 10.
Mm-mm.
You can't say, well, okay, we're all going to be vulnerable. That's not going to work. If people have found that if they share anything, like Nancy, you were saying that, like you walk in organizations and you can just feel that things aren't going right.
Mm.
You can't just walk in there and say, okay, we're going to be like this other company. You have to actually go through all of the steps to get to a place where people trust each other. And
Yeah.
Nancy, you and I've talked about working for organizations, and I think a lot of people, and it does tend to be more women who go through this, but I know men and women who both go through this, where you're sitting in a meeting and they're asking for suggestions, and you give a suggestion and it's ignored, and you can say it again and it's ignored, and then someone else says what you just said and people go, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's annoying.
No,
Yeah.
and it really does happen, and it's interesting how that happens. And it does start with the top management and how they handle things when things happen. And I mean, you can tell it, and you can work for a company for a day and figure it out.
Yeah.
You really can. In fact, you can, in a job interview, when you walk through the employee section and into the boss's office, you can just tell. You
Yeah.
really can. I got to learn that, like I'll go back to the auto club. Their store setup was the insurance adjusters were all over on one side of the building with little enclosed offices, but a glass cubicle, like, so everybody could see that you were there, but they couldn't see what you're doing once you sat down. The sales room was like a free for all. Like, it was totally glass, and they had all these desks in a row, and things happened there. Talk about, paper airplanes and spitballs and all sorts of things were happening, and they had no privacy whatsoever to make sales calls, which I always found to be really odd.
Yeah.
very odd. And they were always all men. I have never seen I'm talking years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago.
I think it's changed, thankfully.
Yeah,
It has.
I never saw a female salesperson. And
Oh, that's a
I
good point. Yeah,
Wow.
that's
yeah,
changed.
and
That
Yeah.
has changed over the years because
But
women
who
weren't
would-
supposed to.
who would want
know?
to be a female salesperson in a group of out of control men who were not managed? Like, I always saw the management manage the claims department, but the salespeople could do whatever they wanted.
This sounds like the TV show Mad Men.
God, I haven't
does.
seen that.
No, I mean, that's what it was, that culture. That's the same kind of era that
That's
you're
how it
talking about.
was.
And,
Mm.
you know, it's changed, but the step-by-step process that you're talking about, Lee, I think that's exactly how you make positive change in all kinds of things. It can't just be rah, 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 rah. And I think that's part of the problems we even have now with all this political divide. And I think that's soaking into the work culture too. I totally
Lord.
believe
Yeah.
that people are not being good team workers
Yeah.
because of a political divide. If that conversation is now in the workplace,
Mm.
then people just go, well, you're this and you're that, and that's that. And so the leadership has to really look at what's going on with the political culture too, because I think that seeps through. Because eventually you do have friends and you can be, you know, maybe your connection is you are both single moms, or maybe your kids go to the same school, and then it can build from there. And then one day that one extra step shouldn't have been taken. And it's like, that's it. You used to be the best mother, but now because you believe that, you don't care, which is not true.
Yeah. When we moved here, I mean, we've been in our home now for 10 years. And when we moved here, I didn't know a single soul in Philadelphia. So I went up and down the street at Christmas time. So we moved in August, but the following Christmas, I still didn't know anybody.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, well, you know, I'm the new person. If I want to get to know people, then I need to make the effort. So I hand wrote invitations, walked up and down the street and invited people to a Christmas party. And for a lot of the people on the street, it was the first time they had met neighbors that they had lived next to for years and years and years.
Wow.
Now
that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm Canadian, so, you know, like.
No, I don't mean what you did is crazy. I think it's crazy that people live next door to each other and don't
Without
know
knowing
them.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
and now
crazy.
it's fairly friendly. I don't think I had that big an influence. I think people are just reaching out more to each other. But then I've also had people who've said, well, you can't invite so-and-so because, and insert whatever political party you don't like, because they are this, and because the majority of the people are this. And I went, they absolutely are invited. Everybody is invited. And everybody got together and everybody had a good time. People didn't talk about politics because they wanted to get to know people. It's only been in the last, you know, I think that it's gotten really nasty in the last few years.
Yes.
I can remember years ago, I didn't know what people voted, who people voted for, and I didn't care. And I want to get back to not caring.
Yeah, well, I think we have to find common ground. I mean, as we travel, you know, we pets it. It's part of our way of, you know, sheltering in place, but and having kittens and dogs, and, you know, turned out to be the coolest thing. And whether there's a pandemic in the next year or two, we'll still do this because it's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And I know you use trusted house sitters too. It's cool. And you meet people and you have that process of getting to know each other. And I love doing a Zoom meeting with people first. You get to have a connection, or a phone call is second best, but a Zoom chat with the pet parents. And you often get to see the dogs. You can see, okay, this is where I'm going. I feel a little bit more comfortable. And so, because you have to go through these steps, and actually those vulnerability steps you have to go through them to be able to trust each other. But we have common ground right off the bat because we all love animals. We all love travel. So we find common ground. Some have become very good friends, and we have different, you know, we'll talk politics and issues. And because of this bond of caring for their pet and their home, which is dear, it's like caring for your children, really, in a way, you know, there's this bond that you don't become an idiot. You just don't. You have space for each other's different beliefs, and you have really good discussions. And it's because of finding those steps of unity where we can connect with each other. I think that's the beautiful thing about it. And I think that is the same as the workplace culture.
Yeah.
We need to find those things.
Here's a phrase that I've used a few times when I'm talking to someone who has a completely different political bent, and I don't feel like arguing, because there's sometimes I can be as much of an ass as anybody and get into these, depending on what mood I am, discussions that should never have started. But I have learned how to say, that's an interesting perspective. I've never looked at it that way before.
Yeah, that's
is my way of saying, well, I don't agree with you, but you gave me a new perspective. And that's good too, because there's times when it is good to hear another perspective, and it is good to see how someone could like somebody that you think is the devil incarnate,
Yeah, I know. I mean, it happens. It happens on our shows. Sometimes it's like, oopsie, did that just come up? Yes.
Yep.
But it's, being honest. There it is. That's a fact, man. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Just telling the truth. No, but it's, I think the trust now, you guys, you've got to be getting busier and busier, because I know you've been doing some speaking engagements. I think trust is something that every employer and leader, company leader, I don't care what business you're in, should be looking at, and what size even. You've got employees working with you or for you. If you have to have a team to get things done, you've got to look at trust right now. And I think you're crucial right now for the economy.
And, now we're doing things around how to manage people in a virtual world, like how to trust your employees in a virtual world. And people have to do that now. You don't have a choice. And so if you're driving yourself crazy because you don't know who to trust, well, then you're the one who needs some work.
I think it's true. I mean, are you going to sit there and say, no, they can't have the TV on while they're working? Or are you going to tell them, people are going to have to manage their schedules the way their house runs? I mean, even just, dogs and cats, dogs have a certain schedule. Now, before you were at work while they were doing their schedule, but if they need to go out and pee at 1 o'clock, they're going to come up and say, I want my treat. I want to go pee-pee, no matter what you're doing. And so everyone kind of has to work around that too.
Yeah. And before, when we were talking before, I made sure, I just did close the door so I couldn't hear my husband talk. So that was because we're both working from home. But before, I used to block off the staircase so Booker couldn't come upstairs. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Sitting next to me, and he's being a really good boy, and he's not barking. But you know what? If he did, I know the two of you, and you'd go,
Booker,
cool.
Go Booker. Who's a big boy, Booker?
I
better not do that too loud.
I have a kitten sitting right next to me, and her name is Joker, and she's very interested in this broadcast.
She's a monkey mouse cat. As soon as you start doing any kind of Zoom or podcast or anything, animals, they want to know there's something going on.
What's going on.
They're having a lively conversation. Something's going on.
Yeah. And I should be part of it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Lea, it's always good chatting with you. And like I was saying, I think what you're doing is invaluable right now for the world. So everyone, Lea-brovedani.com is the website to go to. Follow her blogs and interviews here on Big Blend Radio. Every third Thursday, we talk trust with Lea. And it's cool because I think this is, like I said, so important. So you can keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com and also Lea's previous interviews with us at blendradioandtv.com. She's up in our expert department there. So thank you so much, Lea.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for not making us jump off trees.
Right. and bye, Booker.
Next time, Nancy.